Welcome to Cybersecurity HQ's Daily News Report for December 12th, 2024.
Let's dive straight into the latest cybersecurity news.
Unpacking the technical details and their implications for professionals like you.
We've got a lot to cover today.
Starting with a significant development from the U.S. Department of Justice.
They've just indicted 14 North Korean nationals
Involved in a complex IT worker scheme.
These operatives weren't just your average scammers.
They were highly sophisticated.
Using stolen identities and even AI-generated credentials.
To secure remote IT positions at U.S. companies.
What's particularly concerning
Was that they operated under the guise of entities
based in China and Russia.
Making their activities even more difficult to track.
Right, and this operation was active for 6 years.
Allowing them to funnel an estimated $88 million.
Back to the North Korean government.
This case throws a harsh light on the vulnerabilities.
Inherent in remote work.
Especially when robust identity verification processes are lacking.
Imagine the damage that can be done with an insider
who's secretly working for a hostile nation-state.
It's a chilling thought.
This case should be a wake-up call for any organization hiring remote workers.
It underlines the need for multi-layered verification.
Background checks.
And continuous monitoring of employee activity.
And let's not forget the role of AI in all this.
If adversaries are using AI to craft fake credentials.
We need to be leveraging AI on the defensive side to detect these sophisticated forgeries.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing cat and mouse game.
Now, shifting gears to a perennial problem.
Phishing.
The Verizon 2024 Data Breach Investigations report reveals that phishing remains a leading attack vector.
Responsible for 31% of data breaches.
This shows that even with all the awareness campaigns and technological advancements,
phishing is still a highly effective way for attackers to compromise systems.
And it's not just your classic email phishing anymore.
We're seeing an increase in phishing.
Voice phishing.
Spear phishing targeted at specific individuals.
And even smishing, which uses SMS messages.
What's fascinating and troubling
is how attackers are constantly innovating their techniques to exploit human psychology.
They prey on our trust, our curiosity.
And even our desire to be helpful.
They're masters of social engineering.
These attacks can lead to all sorts of nasty consequences.
From ransomware infections, locking down critical systems, to large-scale data theft.
It's crucial for organizations to invest in multi-factor authentication and advanced threat detection systems to minimize the risk.
But even with those in place, employee training remains absolutely paramount.
I completely agree.
You can have all the security tools in the world.
But if a single employee falls for a well-crafted phishing attempt,
the whole network can be compromised.
Simulated phishing exercises, regular security awareness training.
And even gamifying security practices can help create a more security-conscious culture.
On a more positive note, let's talk about some of the exciting developments in proactive threat intelligence.
Silent Push,
a startup in this space,
just secured $10 million in funding.
What they're doing is pretty revolutionary.
Instead of reacting to attacks,
they're focused on identifying attacker infrastructure before it's even deployed.
That's fascinating.
How exactly do they achieve this preemptive approach?
They essentially monitor global threat activity,
collecting vast amounts of data from various sources.
They then use machine learning and behavioral analysis to identify patterns and predict potential attacks.
By recognizing the early signs of malicious activity,
they can alert organizations to potential threats before they even materialize.
That's a game changer.
It gives security teams the chance to be proactive,
hardening their defenses and taking preemptive measures to disrupt attacks.
I can see why investors are pouring money into this kind of technology.
It has the potential to revolutionize threat intelligence and shift the balance of power in favor of defenders.
And speaking of AI's growing role in cybersecurity,
Sublime Security,
an AI-driven email protection platform,
recently secured a substantial $60 million in Series B funding.
They're using AI to combat both phishing and business email compromise attacks,
which often target high-level executives with access to sensitive financial information.
So it's not just about filtering out spam or malicious attachments anymore.
This platform is actually analyzing the content and context of emails
to identify sophisticated BEC attempts that might slip past traditional security filters.
That's pretty impressive.
Their platform goes beyond detection, offering features like auto-triage
to prioritize high-risk emails
and threat hunting capabilities to proactively search for hidden threats.
It's also highly customizable,
allowing organizations to tailor their rules and policies to their specific needs and risk tolerance.
This combination of AI-powered detection and customization has attracted some big names.
With companies like Spotify and Reddit already using their platform,
That's a strong testament to their effectiveness.
it's becoming clear that AI is not just a buzzword in cybersecurity anymore.
It's a critical tool for organizations looking to stay ahead of increasingly sophisticated threats.
Definitely. Now let's turn our attention to Fortinet.
A major player in the cybersecurity space,
They recently acquired Perception Point for $100 million.
further expanding their capabilities in securing communication and collaboration tools.
Perception Point is known for their dynamic link analysis and API-level integration.
Which complements Fortinet's existing security fabric.
What's particularly interesting about this acquisition is that it's Fortinet's third this year.
It suggests an aggressive strategy to build a comprehensive security ecosystem.
They're clearly aiming to become a one-stop shop for enterprise security needs.
This consolidation in the cybersecurity market is a trend worth watching.
It could lead to more integrated and robust solutions.
But it also raises questions about potential vendor lock-in and the need for open standards and interoperability.
That's a great point.
The last thing we need is a cybersecurity landscape dominated by a handful of monolithic companies.
Now let's take a broader view and look at the evolution of AI in cybersecurity.
Gartner highlights the transformative journey of AI in this domain.
Moving from basic automation to more complex threat detection and response.
It's remarkable to see how AI is changing the way we approach security.
Think about it.
We've gone from using AI to automate simple tasks like password resets,
To now having AI-powered systems that can analyze massive amounts of data
identify subtle patterns of malicious activity.
and even predict future attacks.
Advancements in natural language processing and generative AI are opening up even more possibilities.
For AI to play a crucial role in cybersecurity,
Gartner even mentions synth AI.
a technology with the potential to synthesize vast amounts of information and generate insights that can enhance decision-making in security operations.
Imagine having AI that can analyze threat data, vulnerability reports, and even social media chatter.
To provide actionable intelligence to security teams.
That kind of predictive capability could be a game changer
It can help organizations anticipate attacks, prioritize their defenses.
and respond more effectively to emerging threats.
It's an exciting time to be in cybersecurity.
The rapid pace of innovation means we're constantly challenged to learn new skills and adapt to evolving threats.
It's definitely a dynamic field, to say the least.
But with all this innovation comes a darker side.
Lookout researchers have uncovered a sophisticated spyware tool dubbed Eagleman's Spy.
Which is being employed by Chinese authorities.
And this isn't just some basic keylogger,
This spyware requires physical access to Android devices.
suggesting it's likely used in targeted attacks against individuals of interest.
Once installed, it can extract a treasure trove of sensitive information.
Messages, call logs, GPS data, you name it.
This is a prime example of the escalating use of surveillance technologies.
Especially by authoritarian regimes.
It raises serious concerns about privacy, civil liberties, and the potential for abuse.
It's a stark reminder that cybersecurity is not just about protecting ourselves from cybercriminals.
But also from nation-state actors with advanced capabilities and often less accountability. Speaking of vulnerabilities,
A critical one was discovered,
in Microsoft's multi-factor authentication system,
dubbed Authquake,
this attack exploited a flaw
that allowed attackers to bypass security measures
by bombarding the system.
with simultaneous MFA code attempts,
Essentially, they overwhelmed the system with guesses.
increasing their chances of hitting the right code.
This highlights a vulnerability.
In the rate-limiting mechanisms that are supposed to prevent brute force attacks on MFA.
While Microsoft has patched the vulnerability with stricter rate limits,
It underscores the fact that even widely used security measures like MFA are not infallible.
we need to constantly scrutinize and test our security systems.
Assuming that attackers are always looking for ways to exploit weaknesses.
Absolutely, complacency is the enemy of security.
Now, in a significant victory for cybersecurity efforts,
Europol successfully took down 27 DDoS-for-hire platforms.
as part of Operation Power Off,
This operation also led to the arrest.
of 3 key operators
These platforms provided easy access,
for anyone to launch massive distributed denial of service attacks,
often used for extortion, disruption of services,
or even politically motivated attacks.
like taking down these platforms.
Law enforcement agencies are cutting off a major source of cybercrime infrastructure.
It's a major blow to cybercriminals who relied on these platforms for their attacks.
But as with any law enforcement action,
It raises the question.
will this just drive attackers underground or towards more sophisticated methods?
It's a good question.
While disrupting these readily available platforms is a positive step,
It's likely that attackers will adapt and find new ways to launch DDoS attacks.
We may see a shift towards botnets composed of compromised IoT devices, or even the utilization of cloud resources for amplifying DDoS attacks.
Security professionals need to stay ahead of these evolving tactics and ensure their defenses can withstand more sophisticated attacks.
Let's shift our focus to software vulnerabilities.
Enterprise software maker Clio recently released urgent patches.
For a flaw in their file transfer tools.
This wasn't just a theoretical vulnerability,
It was actively being exploited in malware attacks.
allowing attackers to execute remote code and steal sensitive data.
And these attacks weren't limited to a single industry,
They impacted a range of sectors, including retail, food, and logistics.
demonstrating the widespread reliance on file transfer tools in modern business operations,
Clio has urged all their customers to patch their systems immediately.
highlighting the importance of timely patching and vulnerability management.
This case really brings home the point that any software can be vulnerable,
And neglecting security updates can have serious consequences.
even if a vendor releases a patch.
The responsibility ultimately lies with the organization to apply those patches promptly and ensure their systems are protected.
It's also crucial to have robust monitoring and incident response capabilities in place.
Even with the best patching practices, there's always the possibility of a zero-day exploit or a vulnerability that slips through the cracks.
Being able to detect and respond to an attack quickly can make the difference between a minor incident and a major data breach.
Absolutely. And speaking of patching,
Vulnerabilities in two popular WordPress plugins
Hunk Companion and WP Query Console.
have been exploited to gain backdoor access to websites.
Hunk Companion had a missing capability check.
While WP Query Console had a remote code execution vulnerability.
This highlights the importance of carefully vetting third-party plugins and extensions.
Before installing them on your website,
It's also crucial to keep these plugins updated just like any other software.
to ensure you have the latest security patches.
Attackers are constantly scanning for websites with vulnerable plugins.
So staying up to date is essential for protecting your site.
It's a continuous game of cat and mouse.
While patches have been released, over 56,000 attacks targeting these vulnerabilities have been blocked in the past day alone,
This suggests that many websites are still vulnerable.
either because they're not running the latest versions of the plugins or because administrators are simply unaware of the threat.
We need to shift our mindset from reactive patching to proactive vulnerability management,
This involves continuously scanning for vulnerabilities
prioritizing them based on risk.
and having a well-defined process for patching and mitigation.
Tools like vulnerability scanners and threat intelligence platforms can help streamline this process.
And ensure that security updates are applied promptly.
It's not just about WordPress either.
Aqua security researchers have issued a warning,
About over 300,000 exposed instances of Prometheus.
a popular open-source monitoring toolkit,
These exposed instances are leaking sensitive information.
including credentials and API keys.
It's a stark reminder that misconfigurations can lead to serious security risks.
Absolutely. Prometheus is often used to collect and monitor metrics from various systems.
So if it's not properly secured,
It can become a treasure trove of sensitive information for attackers,
they could potentially gain access to systems launch denial of service attacks.
or even execute remote code,
This emphasizes the need for strong security practices.
even when deploying open-source tools.
Assuming that open source software is inherently secure is a dangerous misconception.
We need to treat it with the same level of scrutiny as any other software.
Ensuring proper configuration, authentication, and access controls.
Now let's talk about Gamaredon.
The Russian state-sponsored hacking group,
They've escalated their activities.
deploying 2 new Android spyware tools
Bone Spy and Plain Gnome.
targeted at users in former Soviet states,
This spyware is capable of stealing a wide range of sensitive information,
including SMS messages, call logs, and GPS data.
giving attackers a comprehensive view of their target's activities.
It's likely that they're using social engineering tactics to trick users into installing these malicious apps.
Perhaps disguising them as legitimate apps or spreading them through phishing campaigns.
The concerning aspect here is the targeted nature of these attacks and the level of sophistication involved.
Nation-state actors like Gamaredon have significant resources and expertise.
making them formidable adversaries,
Defending against these types of attacks requires a multifaceted approach.
including advanced threat detection user awareness training and robust mobile device management solutions,
It's a reminder that cybersecurity is not just about technology.
but also about people and processes.
Even the most sophisticated technology can be bypassed.
If users are tricked into clicking on a malicious link or installing a compromised app,
User education and awareness are critical components of any effective cybersecurity strategy.
absolutely in a positive development.
Minnesota has implemented a new law requiring public schools, charter schools, and colleges to report cybersecurity incidents.
Like ransomware attacks.
This law mandates reporting even if no data was compromised.
And the data collected will be anonymized to protect the privacy of individuals.
The goal is to gain a better understanding of the cyber threats targeting educational institutions.
And to use this information to improve cybersecurity defenses at a state level
This is a proactive approach.
that recognizes the importance of data-driven decision-making in cybersecurity.
By collecting and analyzing incident data,
Security professionals can identify trends, patterns, and vulnerabilities that can be addressed to prevent future attacks.
it's a model that other states might consider adopting.
The more data we have about cyber attacks,
The better equipped we are to defend against them.
sharing information and collaborating on security is crucial in this interconnected world,
Now let's turn our attention to the cryptocurrency sector.
which continues to be a lucrative target for cyber criminals.
Web3 professionals are facing a new wave of attacks.
This time coming in the form of fake meeting apps.
These apps are embedded with malware
Like Realist, which targets macOS and Windows users.
and is specifically designed to steal cryptocurrency.
It's a clever tactic.
That preys on the increasing reliance on remote collaboration tools in the Web3 space.
Attackers are always adapting to new technologies and trends,
Finding ways to exploit our trust and familiarity with popular platforms.
verifying the legitimacy of apps and downloads.
Being cautious of unsolicited links and using strong passwords and multi-factor authentication.
Are essential precautions in this rapidly evolving landscape.
This incident underscores the need for heightened security awareness in the Web3 community.
Cryptocurrency, by its very nature, is attractive to cybercriminals.
And they're constantly devising new ways to target individuals and organizations involved in this space.
And the challenges facing the crypto industry extend beyond security threats.
The Australian operator of the Kraken cryptocurrency exchange
Was recently hit with an $8 million fine.
for regulatory breaches.
This highlights the evolving regulatory landscape around cryptocurrency,
Governments and regulators are increasingly scrutinizing the industry.
seeking to address concerns related to money laundering, fraud, and investor protection.
Navigating this complex regulatory environment will be a major challenge for cryptocurrency businesses in the coming years.
It's a reminder that while the technology behind cryptocurrency is innovative and disruptive,
The industry itself needs to mature and adapt to existing legal and regulatory frameworks.
absolutely. And speaking of regulatory and legal challenges,
FTX debtors have managed to recover $13 million in political donations.
as part of their ongoing bankruptcy proceedings.
This is just a small piece of the complex financial puzzle surrounding the collapse of FTX.
But it highlights the broader implications of cybersecurity incidents and the need for accountability.
When a major cryptocurrency exchange fails,
The fallout can be significant.
impacting not just investors, but also the political landscape and public trust in the industry as a whole.
It's a sobering reminder that cybersecurity is not just about protecting data and systems.
But also about maintaining trust, integrity, and stability in the digital economy
The decisions we make about security have far-reaching consequences.
that extend beyond the immediate technical realm.
Finally, let's revisit the importance of timely patching.
Health Alliance, a healthcare group in New York,
Was fined $550,000,
after hackers exploited an unpatched Citrix NetScaler vulnerability.
stealing a massive 196 GB of sensitive data.
This case is a textbook example of the consequences of neglecting security updates.
The vulnerability in question was publicly disclosed and a patch was available,
But Health Alliance failed to apply it in a timely manner.
leaving their systems exposed to attack.
It's not just about patching either.
Regulators criticized Health Alliance for their lack of compensating controls.
Even if a patch isn't immediately available, organizations should have backup plans and mitigation strategies in place to reduce the risk of exploitation.
This could include network segmentation, access control restrictions.
Or even temporarily disabling vulnerable services until a patch can be applied.
It's a layered approach to security.
You can't rely on a single security measure to protect you.
You need multiple layers of defense to create a resilient security posture. It's a layered approach to security.
You can't rely on a single security measure to protect you.
You need multiple layers of defense.
To create a resilient security posture,
It's like building a castle.
you wouldn't just rely on a single wall to keep out invaders,
You'd have moats
drawbridges,
and multiple layers of defenses.
and even then,
You'd need guards to patrol.
and watch for any signs of weakness.
Exactly.
And in cybersecurity,
Those guards are our intrusion detection systems, our security analysts.
and our incident response teams
They're constantly monitoring,
for suspicious activity.
ready to respond if a breach occurs.
Speaking of cybersecurity leadership,
The Center for Cybersecurity Policy and Law has put forth
some interesting recommendations.
regarding the National Cyber Director role
They're calling for a significant strengthening
of the authority and resources.
of the Office of the National Cyber Director,
They believe the role needs to be codified.
giving it more teeth to actually drive national cybersecurity strategy and policy
Right. And they're also advocating for streamlining cybersecurity regulations
across various government agencies.
Yeah.
It can feel like a bit of a patchwork,
with different agencies having overlapping responsibilities.
and sometimes conflicting priorities,
This can lead to confusion,
and inefficiency.
hindering our overall cybersecurity posture,
A more unified approach is essential.
especially as cyber threats become increasingly complex and interconnected.
We need a clear chain of command and a coordinated strategy.
To effectively address national cybersecurity challenges,
On the acquisition front,
LexisNexis Risk Solutions,
has acquired IDverse.
a document authentication startup.
This acquisition is all about enhancing their AI-powered fraud detection capabilities,
IDverse specializes in combating deepfakes.
which are becoming increasingly sophisticated.
And difficult to detect.
Think about the potential damage.
That could be done with a convincing deepfake video,
Used for social engineering phishing attacks.
or even spreading disinformation.
It's a scary thought.
The implications for identity verification, financial transactions.
And even national security are profound.
Exactly.
And this acquisition signals a growing trend
AI is playing an increasingly crucial role in fraud prevention.
in identity verification.
It's a double-edged sword, though.
While we can use AI to detect and prevent fraud,
Attackers can also leverage AI to enhance their tactics and make their attacks more convincing.
it's an arms race.
And we need to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about
A significant development in the regulatory landscape.
the EU Cyber Resilience Act,
This act has officially taken effect.
introducing mandatory cybersecurity standards for all digital products sold in the EU.
This is a major step toward improving the security of connected devices and software.
And it has implications for manufacturers worldwide,
They're now required to meet specific security requirements.
including providing security updates for a reasonable period and being transparent about potential vulnerabilities,
This is a significant shift from a reactive approach to cybersecurity.
to a proactive one.
It puts the onus on manufacturers to build security into their products from the ground up.
Rather than just addressing vulnerabilities after they're discovered,
It sets a high bar for cybersecurity globally.
and could potentially influence other regions to adopt similar regulations,
Full compliance with the Act is required by December 2027.
giving manufacturers some time to adapt.
But they need to start working towards compliance now.
This is not something they can afford to ignore.
It's a good reminder for organizations of all sizes.
Cybersecurity regulations are evolving rapidly.
And compliance is becoming increasingly complex.
It's essential to stay informed about these changes.
And to proactively address them to avoid potential penalties and reputational damage.
And even organizations that don't directly sell products in the EU could be impacted.
If they use components or software that falls under the scope of the Act,
The need to ensure their suppliers are compliant.
this could lead to changes in procurement processes and supply chain management practices.
Now, for a reminder that even niche sectors are not immune to cyber attacks,
Byte Federal, a Bitcoin ATM operator.
has suffered a data breach,
This breach stemmed from a vulnerability in GitLab,
impacting a significant number of users.
58,000 to be precise.
While it's fortunate that no funds were stolen,
A considerable amount of personal data was compromised.
including social security numbers and transaction records,
This highlights the fact that any organization that handles sensitive data
regardless of its size or industry.
is a potential target for cyber attacks.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of strong security practices across the board,
This includes secure configuration, vulnerability management, incident response planning.
and user awareness training.
Cybersecurity is not just an IT problem.
It's a business risk that needs to be addressed holistically.
And speaking of unexpected vulnerability,
A critical DOS vulnerability.
was discovered in Facebook Messenger for iOS.
What makes this vulnerability particularly noteworthy?
Is that it could be triggered using emoji reactions.
Imagine that.
Attackers could crash group calls simply by exploiting this flaw
Highlighting the fact that vulnerabilities can lurk.
in seemingly innocuous features,
It's a reminder that thorough security testing is crucial,
encompassing not just the core functionality of an application.
but also peripheral features that might seem harmless at first glance.
Attackers are always looking for creative ways to exploit weaknesses.
And we need to be vigilant in identifying and addressing them.
Thankfully, Facebook has patched the vulnerability.
But it serves as a valuable lesson
Security is an ongoing process requiring constant vigilance, proactive measures.
and a deep understanding of the evolving threat landscape.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into today's cybersecurity news,
What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
one thing that's become crystal clear is that the threat landscape is constantly evolving,
We're seeing nation-state actors like Gamaredon,
becoming more sophisticated and aggressive in their attacks
while criminal groups are constantly innovating their tactics.
to exploit new technologies and vulnerabilities.
It's a never-ending race to stay ahead of the curve.
I couldn't agree more.
The sheer volume of vulnerabilities being discovered.
From Microsoft's MFA system to WordPress plugins to enterprise software,
Underscores the critical importance of timely patching and a robust security hygiene.
organizations simply cannot afford to neglect security updates.
The consequences, as we saw with Health Alliance,
That'd be severe.
another key theme that's emerged is the growing role of AI in cybersecurity.
We're seeing AI being used on both sides of the battlefield
Attackers are leveraging AI to create deepfakes, enhance malware,
and automate their attacks,
while defenders are using AI to bolster their defenses, detect threats more effectively.
and even predict future attacks.
It's a fascinating and somewhat unsettling dynamic,
The potential of AI in cybersecurity is immense.
but it also presents new challenges and risks.
As AI becomes more powerful and pervasive,
We need to carefully consider the ethical implications and ensure that it's used responsibly and for the benefit of society.
the successful takedown of those DDoS-for-hire platforms by Europol is a testament to the importance of international collaboration in combating cybercrime.
But as we discussed, it also raises questions about how attackers will adapt,
Will this drive them toward even more sophisticated attack methods?
requiring us to constantly raise our game.
It's a constant game of cat and mouse.
As defenders develop new defenses,
Attackers will inevitably find ways to circumvent them.
this highlights the need for continuous learning adaptation.
And collaboration within the cybersecurity community.
Absolutely.
We need to share information, best practices,
And even threat intelligence to collectively improve our defenses and stay ahead of the evolving threat landscape.
One thing that stood out to me was the Minnesota law requiring schools to report cybersecurity incidents.
It's a proactive approach that recognizes the value of data in improving cybersecurity posture.
The more we know about the attacks that are happening.
The better equipped we are to prevent them in the future.
And it's not just about collecting data,
It's about analyzing it, extracting actionable insights.
but using those insights to inform our security strategies and defenses.
This data-driven approach to cybersecurity is essential for staying ahead of evolving threats and making informed decisions.
The discussion around the EU Cyber Resilience Act is another crucial point,
This act sets a new standard for digital product security.
and will have far-reaching implications for manufacturers and consumers worldwide.
It's a signal that cybersecurity is no longer an afterthought.
But a fundamental requirement for any digital product.
And finally, the incidents involving Byte Federal, the Bitcoin ATM operator,
And the fake crypto meeting apps.
serve as stark reminders that security is not just a concern for large enterprises or government agencies.
Organizations of all sizes across all industries are potential targets.
And the consequences of a cybersecurity breach can be devastating.
Whether it's financial loss, reputational damage, disruption of services.
Or even the compromise of sensitive personal data. The stakes are high.
Cybersecurity is not optional. It's a critical business imperative.
That demands attention investment.
And a proactive approach.
Well, that brings us to the end of our cybersecurity news deep dive for today.
It's been a whirlwind of information.
But I hope you found it insightful.
And valuable.
We encourage you to visit Cybersecurity HQ
For more in-depth analysis, job opportunities.
and community engagement.
Cybersecurity HQ is a thriving community with a job board.
The latest news in-depth reports.
And a newsletter read by over 70,000 cybersecurity professionals every week.
We're dedicated to empowering cybersecurity professionals like you.
with the knowledge and resources you need to stay ahead of the curve.
Until next time, stay vigilant
Stay informed.
and stay secure.